Hey, hi all, a very good afternoon. Thank you for having taken the time to have joined me in today's webinar. This is Jay from the AD Solutions team of Manage Engine. So, first things first, before we get into the presentation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you the access to the cloud instance that we've got. You can make use of the cloud instance to, try out the features as I demonstrate today. Demo.admanagerplus.com. The URL on your screen, demo.admanagerplus.com, is going to be the instance that you'll want to use if you want to try out the features that we'll be discussing today. Make sure that you log in as the administrator for the bit of the presentation where we'll be talking about how to configure workflow, which is the agenda for the day, and for the bit of the presentation where you'd want to get a feel as a technician for raising a request, things like that. Log in as a technician. Pretty self-explanatory. Demo.admanagerplus.com. Administrator login for the configuration bit, and technician login for the execution bit. All right. So that's as regards to the demo presentation, or the demo we've put up on the cloud. And as regards to questions that are coming up, feel free to make use of the chat window that's available at your GoToWebinar console. You can shoot questions right at me and I'll take your questions during the course of presentation. All right. If I probably miss out on one or two, do not worry. I'll have them taken towards the end of the presentation. And as regards to the recording of today's session, not a problem at all. We can go over and send the recording right after the webinar gets over. All you got to do is just drop me a message with your email ID on the chat towards the end, and I'm going to have the video sent. Yes. All right. So today's webinar is on building a better help desk with workflow for AD management. All right. The first thing that comes to our mind when we talk about administrators doing AD management is the sheer burden that they face day in day out. By doing the repetitive tasks, things like user onboarding, user offboarding, group membership management, so on and so forth. So most of the time in many organizations, in spite of having a lot of resources recruited for IT administration, still it's one or two administrators who take up all the workload to get all of it done, because you do not really trust everybody with Active Directory permissions. You do not let them do a task in Active Directory straight. Yes. So that being the case, what would it be like to create a simple system where you let your end users, the guys who actually have a requirement to go on, to have a say to an extent, and let them do all the hard work or the weightlifting? What am I talking about? Let's take up ideal cases and go on to further discuss as to what the whole idea of business workflow is going to be all about. The first logic behind workflow, pretty simple. We've tried to bring in the fundamental structure with which your ITSM tool works. You have your help desk tool where you have your HR asking for a new user creation. So that's going to be a service request or service ticket that you got to cater to. Likewise, there's going to be a request from your end user for something as simple as a password reset. But then this is the exact same thing that you do over and over again. Every single time there's somebody at the other end, an end user from the organization, who's making a request for a task that you're already very aware as to how it works. So minimal input from their end and maximum work from your side. So that is how it's always been. But instead, what we are planning to do is we're planning to bring the functionalities or take them to the very end users, whoever is making the request. Here in this case, let's say the HR wants user provisioning to be done. Give him a console, him or her a console from where he can make a very clear, concise, intelligent request for user creation. Say for example, you've got vendor contacts to be managed. So your operations staff in your organization, say for example the admin from your organization wants to have contacts for vendors created, contacts for vendors deprovisioned every single time. It's you who takes up the responsibility of contact management. Instead, let's give them a dashboard where they can make requests. So the idea, to sum up, is pretty much very simple. whatever they've already been used to, the fact where they go on to raise requests that are simple and that demand to and fro conversations between the concerned staff and the IT department. We are taking that challenge off the grid and handing over all the responsibility to those end users, be it your HR, your non-IT staff, or your operations staff, or probably a line manager who wants to do a group membership modification for one of his reportees. So all that we are taking to the very starting place where the request arises, and we are giving them a console, a simple console from where they can make requests. So that's the whole idea of today's session. We are trying to build a better help desk, a more efficient help desk, where you all where all you got to do is spend time in evaluating the request, checking if the request is authentic, and then just approving it, because everything else is already in place right when the request is made. So it's going to be pretty simple. The agenda, I've given you a quick overview as to what this session is all about. We'll start off by understanding how the task based ticketing works in AD Manager Plus, the whole chain of workflow in AD Manager Plus. We'll go on to talk about how to create a simple request portal for your HR for user related activities, things like onboarding, deprovisioning, disabling accounts, and so on. And then from a security point of view, we are going to let your line managers request for group membership modifications for their reportees. When it comes to permission management, again, if you wish to go on and let your employees have access to certain files or certain folders, and you want them to make requests that are easy to make, safe, and as well time restricted, we are going to talk about that dashboard as well. And when it comes to vendor contact management, we are going to give your operations staff a simple dashboard from where they can create and delete vendor contacts. And finally, the bit that's going to be super useful, where you get to assign which tickets got to go to which technician, and how it gets automatically tracked and emailed as well. So pretty much the whole part of today's session is going to be on simplifying all the hard work that you've been doing by handing over a bit of hard work for a change to the end users. All right, so we'll start off by understanding what integrations AD Manager Plus supports at this point in time. So all this introduction that I'd given comes to this place where we are trying to have AD Manager Plus integrated with help desk tools. So as a part of the previous webinars, for those of you who've been a part of, where we try to empower the IT help desk, we've achieved these tasks. From your IT help desk, be it ServiceNow or Service Desk Plus, we're letting you create, unlock, enable, disable, delete, and reset passwords from your very own help desk console, taking things up a bit. So all your end users in your Service Desk Plus or ServiceNow are going to get the provision to be a part of AD Manager Plus requesters, and all of that for free. Yes, you heard me right, for free. So any end user in your organization, you'd want them to have access to make a request for any of the AD management tasks that are a part of the workflow module. Yes, that's going to be possible from now on. That is the new addition that we've done to the product. Requesters, anybody in your organization can be a requester for free. So what's the biggest challenge? Like we've already spoken enough, native tools, they have big challenges when it comes to helping you get things done in bulk. So now that you're transferring a bit of your burden to other users, we are trying to simplify the whole process of user creation for the HR as well. A 360-degree onboarding from the very place where the HR makes a request for user creation. So this is a quick example of how complex a PowerShell script looks if you would want to go on and create a user from your side, which is what you've always been doing. Instead of toggling between multiple windows to get user accounts provisioned after your HR makes requests, what we are planning to go on and do is implement business workflow. So all that I've spoken is summed up right here in this image that's right in front of you. There is a requester. The requester can be a HR. The HR logs into the dashboard, which is the ADMP dashboard, and this dashboard can be configured and the HR can be made to raise requests based on your priority. You want your HR to have access to user creation? Yes, that can be given. You want your HR to have access to make requests for user modification? Done, can be granted. So what happens is the HR makes a relevant logical request for an operation. It goes on to take shape as a workflow ticket, a simple workflow ticket, and this ticket in turn lands up in the dashboard of the help desk or an administrator based on how the assigning rules are set. It can go to the help desk that has the provision to request, approve the request or reject the request based on the validity of the request. So post verification of the request, which falls as a workflow request. Upon approval, it gets incorporated in Active Directory. Upon rejection, they receive a mail or a message based on your configuration saying that the request was rejected. Pretty simple and straightforward, just like how your ITSM tool or your services management or your help desk tool works. That is the entire idea, bringing the best of both worlds. So bringing the idea of service management into your AD management and simplifying it with dashboards, self-explanatory dashboards. So 360-degree user management. This is the dashboard. So the HR makes a request, the approver, who's the help desk, gets to approve. And this is how a simple request from the HR would look. Before we get into how the request would look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the product. All right. And I'm going to show you how configurations can be made for workflow from AD Manager Plus. All right. Again, a quick reminder, demo.admanager plus for your trial. Yes, you can go on and try out. So this is my personal instance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be briefing you as to how the workflow module helps. Getting into workflow, what is the first thing that we get to see? We see a simple flow diagram, which is going to be giving us a brief into how the order of execution happens, who requests, how it progresses. Yes. In organizations that have a little extra hierarchy, you can go on to add more levels of approval. So if you want that to be removed before reviewed before the request gets forwarded to the approver, you can have a user, probably a manager of higher authority than the requester, to review the request, and then an approver, and finally an executor who is all suited up to execute that request, and that gets into Active Directory. So it's completely up to you based on your requirement. And there's good news for you guys. If you want to completely tweak the flow in which this works, the next big release that AD Manager Plus is going to come up with, the 6600, that specific build is going to have provisions for multiple business workflow. Not just this, you can have multiple workflow configured. So based on your personal flow, you can go on and configure it. So I'm keeping the workflow simple for this demonstration. It's just going to be a requester and an approver, and then that getting translated to Active Directory. So fundamentally, this works like this. There are just two components to workflow in AD Manager Plus. The first one is the logic or the role. All right, we call that requester roles. So this is where you get to define what are the actions that a user can make requests for. Or to put things in simple terms, we're going to try and configure the actual dashboard that the end user should have right here. So there are a few requester roles that are already configured. Yes, what do we see? We see a role for computer modification. We see one for permissions handling, things like group related permissions or access related permissions for files. Yes, and going further, we're able to see user creation, user account modification for the HR, vendor contact management. So likewise, what you can do is you can have multiple requester roles based on your requirement, one for your HR, one for your admin staff, one for your operations team. You can go on making multiple roles. You can go on to specify what goes within that role. So what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to open a existing requester role that I've already created, just so that you get clarity, and then get into the actual process of creating a new role. All right. So first thing is user creation. User creation is going to be the requester role that I'll be ideally assigning to the, yes, you guessed it right, to the HR. So the dashboard that I want my HR to have access has to be very simple. I want my HR just to have the provision to create users, or to be precise, raise requests for user creation. Yes. So what is the idea? So you as the help desk do not need to take the pain of, going forward, talking to your HR, figuring out which user, which department, what attributes, nothing at all. You just give access to this module that's right here that says create users, and the HR, when he makes the request, can use or avail a list of templates. you know Under AD management, we can configure user creation templates, those templates, and specify the kind of user that he wants to be onboarded. So here I'm just having create users selected. Likewise, I can go on to choose any of the actions that are listed right here. Since it's a user creation role, I'm just restricting or refining myself to creation of users. If in case you choose your HR has to have access to bulk user creation, you can enable this as well. So bulk user creation works with a CSV input. Your HR will get to import a CSV file with basic AD attributes. It might seem or sound a little complex asking your HR to actually do, a CSV import and all that. Do not worry at all. I'll just, sorry about the mess. A simple CSV file would look like this. A simple CSV file is this. So all that your HR's got to do when using a CSV file for bulk user creation is specify the first name, last name, and the template name. Simple as that. So the username, the corresponding template, user creation template for a different department. And when he makes the request, you get to check into the details and approve it, where all the attributes pertaining to this department are populated because your template is configured right. So that is how bulk user creation requests work. So I'm refining just a single user creation here. So I'm going on and saving the role. Likewise, I'm going further to also show you how modification for HR would look like. So I'm calling it user account modification for HR. So here I'd want my HR to have the provision to raise requests for department change. So if there's a user moving from the sales department to marketing department, that's the case. So the HR will be able to select the user, select the right template for modification, and make a request. And all you got to do is just approve it. And the moment you approve that request, all of the properties for that user are going to get automatically changed based on the template. So I've been talking quite a lot about templates. For those of you who want context, no problem. In a while, I'll just get to the bit where we'll be showing you how templates work. So do not worry. Likewise, for user management, the HR can also have provision to raise requests for resetting a password for an end user, or if somebody goes and approaches the HR for unlock account, yes, they can do that. If the HR wants to disable a user account, raise request, they can do that. So a lot of things are right here: user management, group management, computer contact, and permissions management. Ideally, if it's your HR, it's just going to be user management that you'd be needing to give them access. All right. So I've saved that role as well. So what did I tell you? There are two fundamental components for workflow. The first one is going to be the requester roles, the one that I just briefed you. The next one, most logical one, selecting which users got to have the requester role. So step one, configure a requester role. Step two, select a requester and have that role mapped. So here it's going to be the HR who's the requester. Pretty simply, you can choose to add a new requester, right? Adding a new requester is like a cakewalk. When you hit browse, you get to view all the users who are there in your organization. You can also go on to add groups as requesters. So you want all the staff in your HR department to have access, select the right group. You can go on and do that. Instead, if you just want one user, look up for that specific user and say okay. All right, so here you can do that. Post that, you can choose the role that you want to grant that specific technician. So here, since it's the HR, I want the HR to have access to user creation and modification, and I can say okay. So these are the roles that we configured right here. And the best part is here it comes. So you want your HR to have access to only a specific OU. Say you have an organizational hierarchy or structure where you've got OUs for different geographic locations. So your HR for United States shouldn't have access to make requests for your office that's there in England. You don't want to do that. So you can go on and have OUs as well configured. All right. So I've got one already configured right here. The one is for the HR requester, and it's both for user creation and modification. So that bit of it is done. So what I've done is I've done two things: created a role for user creation and modification, and then I've assigned it to my HR. So this is the most crucial part of today's session, where we get to see how the entire dashboard changes when your end user or your requester logs in and tries to make a request. All right. Signing out, quickly pretending to be the HR requester, logging in. So what do we see right here? It does not have AD management, it does not have delegation, workflow, nothing at all. The tab is pretty simple and it says requests. So here is a provision to create requests for user management tasks, the ones which I had selected for user creation and for user modification. So all of that is listed right here. When I say user creation, I'm the HR right now wanting to onboard a new joinee. So I click user creation. So what do I have right here? I have a template, all right, a template from where I can fill out details required for my specific user. Instead of manually sending across details, I can have access to a simple template. So I can say create uh, John's account for John Smith. So this is going to be a simple request, and if you go on, you'd be able to see that there are multiple templates that are listed right here. So you can choose to either grant your HR the basic system template, but then if you do not really want your HR to get into the intricacies of Active Directory, you do not want them to configure an Exchange mailbox or something, and you want your HR just to have access to simple AD attributes, you can always, from the configuration or the role that you set, you can choose to restrict the template access and just give access to a basic template, like the one that's listed right here. Assuming that I had given just access to the basic template to the HR, the layout for the HR would look this simple. So all that your HR's got to do is, fill in the basic details for the new user who's getting created, and all of that gets automatically populated. From the accounts tab, you can also go on to configure and set details as per your requirements. So the layout that's right here, right in front of you, is completely customizable. You get to tell your HR, or you get to let your HR fill out requests as per your requirement. If you want it to be simple, it can be simple. If you want your HR to have access to, all things that are important, like the department group membership, you want them to specify at the very start, you can always grant them complete access. And you must be wondering if this layout is customizable. That's totally possible. So this is going to be the key dashboard that's going to help your HR make a relevant, logical request for user creation. So I'm going to go on and just create a sample request to you so that you understand how it works. So here I'm going to go ahead and say description as finance department for that specific user. All right, so employee ID, I know what the employee ID is, let's say 4254. So the HR knows all of this already. So all of that is configured from the accounts tab. Yes, if you want your HR to pre-specify a password, you can do that. Or if you want this tab to completely go off, you can always customize it from the templates module. I'll get to templates in a bit, so don't worry. So let's say the HR also keys in a password for the user, the new user, and gets going creating a simple request. So yeah, the most important thing, how can we forget? The subject is important. So now that I changed the template, the subject disappeared. So John Smith onboarding. All right. So John Smith onboarding and create request. So what happens right here for the user John Smith with details already populated with password also set, the user is not created, but what you see is user creation request is sent. So to view the request that's created, click here. What happens is the HR can keep track of what request that he or she is made. So the HR has made a request for some modification or for some account lock or unlock or disabling an account. All of that gets populated in the requests tab. Quickly doing a recap, we're talking about the HR having the ability to raise relevant logical requests where all of attributes are pre-populated, and in a while I'll show you how simple the work for the administrator becomes. All he's got to do is just approve, just look into it and approve, nothing at all. Likewise, we saw the HR making a request for user creation, that is done. So here we've got other tasks that are listed right here. From the request module, we're able to see that the request is also added. So signing out and logging in as the administrator, I'll show you how the request looks like. So workflow, since I'm the approver, I would have received a request from the HR. Right here, ta-da, it says John Smith onboarding and the request is raised and it's open. So getting into it, I'll be able to view into the object and choose to either approve it or reject it. Since I'm the administrator, I'd want to tweak a few things. I'd want to change certain things that the HR has given. So if, say for example, I want to go ahead and alter account related properties, I want to alter this, I want to alter group membership, I can do all of that. Yes, I can change, I can since I'm aware of the mailbox configurations, I can select mailboxes, specify them as well. So the whole process that could have ideally taken a lot of time for you to manually do, everything is in place if the HR were to fill out this right. And in fact, to simplify this further, we've been talking about templates, right? User creation templates. So you can go on to create templates for different departments. So right when your HR creates a request, you can have templates mapped for different departments. Say for example, marketing department, and choose to have attributes pre-filled. This is what I'm talking about. So attribute filled out. So here I can have a marketing specific container selected. I can get into the accounts tab and also have group memberships modified for marketing department. Likewise, from the contacts tab, I can say the department and choose marketing. I can go on and specify the manager. I can go on and fill out any of these attributes that are a part of the templates for user creation. So for those of you who are interested, just drop me a message. We've got a separate demonstration for user provisioning process. I can share the video for that as well. So the whole process that could have taken a lot of time for the help desk to manually start off with a simple one line request saying from the HR saying create user for John Smith, create account for John Smith. All of that is simplified because the HR had the option to fill out the details prior to hand without having to write emails or having to write service requests. And now that we saw how template works, the HR can also choose to pre-specify attributes with simple clicks. So it gets that easy, that simple, and you can choose to view the request that you've received. Here the request is in place, so I can choose. All that I got to do is, after verifying this, I'm going to go ahead and hit approve. I'm saying good to go, good to go. And when I hit OK, the user is going to get created in Active Directory. So it's going to be pretty simple. That's simple and straightforward. So what are we talking about? We are talking about granting the end user the provision to actually make a request. In this case, a request for user creation. So here the HR made a request, and yes, it says executed and closed. So the object is also onboarded successfully with relevant attributes. So how simple it could get, just one click, approve it, and you're good to go. So that's as regards to user provisioning. Getting into other topics for the day, we've got a few more topics to be discussed, like onboarding that you given for your HR and onboarding access or a dash access. You can go on to have permissions management made secure and simplified. So instead of you getting into one user after the other, looking into a request and manually mapping which file which users got to have access to, instead again you can create roles, set your end users for those roles, let them make requests for permissions to secure folders and files. All right, so we're talking about a secure way of doing it, no mess at all, zero mess or zero error way of doing it. So it's going to be easy and safe. A modification request would look like this. I'm going to show that as well in a while. A simple, easy, time restricted modification request. So the user would get to select, the requester would get to select the folder, the level of access, the person, the permission levels, and all of that. Likewise, group membership again can be made simplified. Management, group membership management, that's what I'm talking about. So the line manager can make a request for the addition or removal of a resource from a group. Pretty simple. That again is going to be effortless. The next important discussion for the day, vendor contact management. So contact management is a big hassle that every organization has, because you will have a vendor company with 10 point of contacts coming into your organization. The next month, before even the vendor's out, and all of the contacts have to be removed from the system. So keeping track of who's got to come, what attributes got to be filled out for which employee or which external contact or vendor is going to be really tedious. Instead, again, we can go on and create templates for vendor contacts as well, and let our operations staff make requests for vendor contact management. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the product and show you two things in a row. The first thing is for permissions handling or permissions management. The next one is for vendor contact management. So here we got permissions management. The role says permissions management, and pretty simply things like group membership have been added when it comes to the user management part. And when it comes to permissions, I'm also letting my user make request, or my, in this case, my, say for example, the finance manager, let any of the finance executives have access to critical folders or raise request for folder access. So that way nothing could possibly go wrong. That is selected. So I'm going to quickly show you how it looks for the finance manager when he wants to raise a request. Pretending to be the finance manager. Okay, so the UI looks completely different from how it looked for the HR requester. That's because the roles that are selected for this specific user is different. So we have provisions for requests to group membership addition and removal and folder permission. So this is exactly what a line manager would want. So adding to a group, let me quickly get into that. Select add group. You can go on and select the list of groups from the list that is available. Let's say your finance manager wants one of his executives to have access to this specific finance group. So that is done. So the request is of high priority because it's critical and it's required right away. So grant access authorized authorized by a finance manager, whatever his name is, let's say James Bond. Okay, and for which user does this request? So it's going to be Bruce. So the finance manager has made a group addition request, or adding this specific critical finance group to Bruce's kitty. So pretty simple, straightforward. Instead of all the red tapeism, instead of waiting for people to approve, people to verify the email, get to and fro, it becomes all the more simple when you have multiple groups to be added for a specific user. Pretty simple. The finance manager's got the provision to make a request. It's for adding to a group. He's saying this specific group, he or she is saying finance. The priority is high. The user is also selected and the request is created. Pretty simple. The request is successfully created and it will be forwarded to the administrator. So the administrator can view into the request and choose to either approve it or reject it. So from the requests portal, you will be able to see what request the finance manager made. Likewise, if the finance manager wants a specific user to be removed from a group, so a user from the finance department has got all naughty, he's been meddling around with payroll details or something of that sort, so you can quickly say clear all his group membership, or select a specific group from which you want the user to be off, in this case again finance, selecting finance and saying okay, and it's again top priority, instant action required. All right, so select the user who's been doing all these. Charles is the guy who's been causing all the trouble. So select Charles and raise request done. So the administrator would have got all of these requests, and the best part is since all of these are critical and you can't really take the luxury of looking at them at a later point in time. The product is so configured where the administrator or the technician, help desk technician, gets instant notifications for a user or for a request creation or for a approval or for a rejection. All of that gets delivered right away to the administrator. You can configure the mail or you can configure an SMS as well. So for something as critical as instant action for removing, so the administrator or the help desk could have got a request right to his inbox, and upon getting into the request he'd have the provision to approve or reject the request. In this case I'm going to go ahead and hit approve, say removed from group, and I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. So before I hit OK, I'll just show you how the request looks like. So here Charles is off the specific group. That's what we're talking about. So remove from group, and the group is finance. Okay, getting back to the request, selecting the request and approving it, saying OK. So the execution is in progress. So what could have ideally taken a lot of time for the line manager to notify the administrator, the help desk, getting back, figuring out which user, what group membership. Instead, you give the line manager all the rights to raise a right request. You as the help desk or the administrator can just approve it and relax. So it gets that simple. Quickly getting back, there are a few more things that I want you to understand today. Impersonating as a finance manager again. In this case, there's something different, not just group membership, permissions management. Here is the most critical thing that can be of great help. Permissions management. So who would know better than the actual line manager or the person involved for permissions related to folders? They'd know which users got to have what access. So it gets really simple. No chance for an error at all, because the end user or the manager selects what permissions, what folders and all of that. So let's get into any of the folders and quickly check how it looks. So let's say taking an example of this and hitting OK. So for this specific folder, the manager wants his user, say for example again in this case Bruce, to have access to this specific folder, and he wants to set the permission just as read. So Bruce can just get to read, and the duration can also be set. This is the best part. So Bruce is a recruit who's on his internship, or say for example he's a trainee, his span is just 6 months. So the user, the end user who's the finance manager, can get to specify the time, say a specific day after 6 months, that can be set, that can be done, or for a specific day. Let's say he just wants this Bruce to have access to critical data for 2 hours, that can also be done. So this is the best part about the request. So just in time access. So this is the best part about making the request. The requests don't stop with the folder or the level of permission, but also these are time restricted requests that are completely safe. So when the when the help desk approves this request right after 2 hours, automatically the product is going to go on and remove permissions for the user Bruce after 2 hours, because the timeline is set likewise. So priority is high, immediate action again, saying create folder financial data access. All right, pretty simple, and request is created. So the request is completely created, successfully created. Signing out and logging in as the help desk or the administrator to check how the requests look, getting into the request module. All right, so here I've got requests that are from the finance manager, folder access right here. Getting into it, I'm able to see which user, which object, which level of permission and all of that. Getting into it, I'm able to see that as well. I can quickly choose to either approve it or reject it. So here, since it's a high priority request from the finance manager himself, I am going to go ahead and approve this request. I'm saying granted. Okay, and the request is granted. So that's the whole idea of simplifying the process. So you day in day out have your end users talking to you, making requests through emails, through service tickets, multiple conversations, manual data entry, you getting to do all the hard work. Not at all. That's not the way we want you to work. Pretty simple. Have all your end users, any single end user, to have the provision to make requests for any of the actions that are listed right here. One more action for the day, last one, is the vendor contact management. All right, pretty simple. Select the contact creation and deletion. Select the requester. In this case, it's going to be the operations manager who gets to create or delete the vendor contact. Logging in and pretending to be the operations manager. The last use case for the day, operations manager. So, okay, getting into it. So the operations manager would need the provision to create or delete a contact. So single contact creation. From here, the most important or the most nifty feature that is going to be contact templates, just like user creation templates. So I have a contact template for logistics vendor, I have a template for the housekeeping vendor. So all of the data are already pre-populated from the template, and that's going to help the request to be all the more sensible, all the more pointed, all the more relevant. So pretty simple for contact management. I'm just going with the system templates. Now the the operations manager gets to make requests for contact creation, fill in the details right from the very simple web form. You can't ask for more. Everything is in place. And in fact, to make this a lot easier, you can go on and create templates for your operations manager from where we can just pick and have attributes pre-populated and make requests. So what have we been discussing about? We've been talking about workflow. The workflow is pretty simple. We've got all our end users and we're trying to give them the task of doing all the hard work for a change. Why to take up all the burden? So we are trying to unburden ourselves and build a completely better help desk system. So that is the idea. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and put together few blogs at manageengine.com. So you can get into blogs.manageengine and get to read about the entire process step by step, the intricacies of it. So the topics that were discussed today, yes, they have been blogged as well. So we've put together this blog, a 4-part blog series. And yes, for those of you who've joined today's session, what we're going to do is we're going to send out a special copy of a solution brief that contains everything that was discussed today, right from creation of a requester role and how important a role is, because this is the dashboard that's going to let you create or grant access to make requests for user management, group management, computer contact and permissions management, all of that covered, and how to have them assigned for free, completely free, for any end user in your organization who is a part of your Active Directory. Have them mapped as requesters and have them mapped to specific roles, and go on to also understand how notification rules work, where the executive or the IT help desk gets notified when a specific task or user creation, deletion, any of that request is performed or raised, request is raised. Yes, that bit is also covered. And when it comes to assigning rules, this is one thing that I want you to take close watch of in the workbook that we'll be sending out for all you attendees. So the assigning rules is where you get to define which technicians got to receive what requests. So here you would have rules from where you can select criteria. You can say for a specific action, say for example, I'm just giving you a quick sneak peek as to what assigning rules are. They're going to still be a part of the workbook, just giving you extra bit of knowledge. We've got few more minutes, so you can go on and say for a specific action like creation of users, so it's always got to be assigned to this specific technician. You can say assign it to this specific help desk technician. So that is the beauty of the product. We don't just let you do things, we let you do things your way. So you can have a completely customized workflow with different levels of hierarchy to the workflow. Have all of your end users as requesters, let them do the hard work for a change. Let them perform whatever request they want from simple, self-explanatory, error-free web-based dashboards. So I've pretty much summed up the entire workflow for you today. This is the workflow module we've been discussing all this long. And yes, you can go on and download AD Manager Plus if you choose to, try out. If you're evaluating the product, no problemo. And yes, as promised, we will be sending out a special workbook for all of you for building a better help desk with workflow for AD management. This is Jay, your presenter for the day. Thank you for being such a wonderful audience. It was my pleasure bringing you the webinar today. All right. So I'm available at the chat right now to take all your questions. I've been receiving a lot of questions. Thanks for all that. I've been trying to answer a few during the presentation. Thanks to Gaurav. A big shout out for Gaurav for taking the questions simultaneously. Yes, guys, it is going to be a wrap on today's session. We were discussing about how to build a better help desk. So that's exactly what we want you to do. We want you to stand by your side, see you create a better AD infrastructure. That's exactly what we want to do. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for coming in. Until next time, this is Jay signing off. Thank you. See you. Tada. Bye bye. Oh, thank you so much for all the nice feedback. Good to see that. Thank you. Thank you. And this is going to be my email ID. You can get in touch with me for any of your problems or queries that you have, related to AD Manager or any AD product for that matter. I'd be getting right to you. And yes, for those of you who want a copy of today's workshop or webinar, no problem. Just drop me your email address and I can go on to send a recorded copy of the webinar. All right. Thank you so much.